investigation and mystery in RPGs. And if anyone is in the wrong panel at 9 in the morning, you have yourself to blame. This panel was my idea, so for my sins, I get to moderate it. And I will begin my moderation by introducing myself, and then we will go down the line, and our superb panel will introduce themselves, give a little hint as to why they're on this specific panel. Then we'll do some sort of zeroth level rules and theories that we've had in a life of writing and running investigative or mystery games. And then we will try and break it open for questions from you guys, hopefully around the half-hour mark, just so that y'all get to find out why you came here. As I said, the biggest mystery of all. So I am Kenneth Hite. I am a writer and game designer. Primarily, recently I've been involved with the Gumshoe engine designed by Robin Laws, writing investigative games from Pelgrane Press, including Trail of Cthulhu, second edition coming out hopefully pretty soon. Nice Black Agents, Fall of Delta Green. I also was the lead designer on Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, and I've done an awful lot of mystery scenarios as part of working for Pelgrane. So that's me.
I'm Crystal Mazur. I am a writer and an educator. I focus on primarily horror and kids games. Sometimes they mix. But I also have written mysteries and investigative style adventures. I've worked on everything from Never Going Home to 3 different books for Vampire 5th edition. I'm the lead designer for Pip System and a whole bunch of other things.
Hi everyone, I'm Elisa Teague. I'm a game designer, RPG author, and puzzle designer. I'm known in RPGs for, I guess, a lot of things now, but for this purposes of this panel, I did write the puzzle chapter in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and in my adventure writing, I am known for inserting puzzles, mystery, intrigue. That is kind of my specialty. Aside from that, I've been producer and lead designer on a number of things, including the Hasbro branded properties of G.I. Joe, Transformers, Power Rangers, My Little Pony, et al. And I just had 2 releases that are hitting stores now. One is the Welcome to Night Vale RPG, and also I was producer and writer on the Crooked Moon folk horror RPG. And now currently I am VP of Creative at Infinite Stories. So I don't know. That's it.
I hate going last. My name is Rick Meints. I'm with Chaosium. I'm here because I owe Ken Hite money. Anyway, but Chaosium's had a little game called Call of Cthulhu that's been out since 1981. I love doing the Call of Cthulhu Classic Kickstarter. I struggled with running horror games and investigative games because Call of Cthulhu is not my first love at Chaosium, but it is my most recent love. And so I kind of bring a fresher perspective for myself in terms of I'm learning as I go, and it's just a fun way to play.
Can I be a weirdo really quickly? Can I ask if you're answering any questions to have a spoiler alert for anything Masks related?
Okay. Everybody's welcome to ask. All questions are welcome.
Okay, but otherwise I can't know those answers.
Elisa is playing massive Nyarlathotep, so no one tell her that Nyarlathotep is involved. That's a spoiler.
You'll love Egypt.
I mean, we just left Egypt. But okay, that's a spoiler.
Then you'd love it.
That's the type of spoiler I need a spoiler alert for.
You just survived Egypt. What could you possibly be spoiled for?
Survived is, I don't know.
Anyhow, with that, the zeroth law, the sort of the first thing you come to when you're designing a mystery or an investigation. And I guess we can all just sort of go down and name our sort of what principles we either look for if we're commissioning a mystery adventure or designing it. Rick, since you hate going last, why don't you go first then? Smart guy.
Okay. I hate going first, by the way.
That's why I took the middle seat.
I always try to keep it simple with things. I try not to over-engineer it, because I'm currently writing what I hope will be a scenario that will get published. And I always just keep reminding myself that if I over-engineer it, it's so easy to get lost in the weeds. And if they miss one detail or one little thing, it could derail it. It's like, how could they miss that? I've been working on this for years, it's so obvious, and if they didn't get it. And so I always try to give them a bunch of times to get back on track, especially with investigation. And I try to play theater of the mind as best as I can. And by that I mean that I try to describe things a little bit, and then try to give the players things that are going to fill in their mind, versus super descriptive and a little bit too much. So I like to keep it simple. That's what I'll start with.
We are opposite people. I totally over-engineer everything, but I do provide a lot of opportunities to find clues. I follow a system of, I treat my games, even if it's not a murder mystery, when I'm writing a full campaign, I attack it as if it was a murder mystery, dropping clues everywhere. But those clues, if they are missed, can also be found in other places later with helpful GM tips that tell them how to move those things. And I follow. It's interesting because I was just reading a book that mentions it, but I follow very closely to the 10 Commandments of Ronald Knox. I think I'm getting his name right.
Yeah.
Of investigative fiction, where every single thing that people need to know are right in front of their eyes. I don't hide anything. I don't lie about anything. You always know what the answer is pretty much from the beginning. You just have to kind of see it and put everything together. But I like dropping clues throughout everything. So there's that aha moment. This is very much because I'm a puzzle designer. I do escape rooms and things like that. And so I treat everything kind of in that way. And I use a lot of terrain and no theater of the mind. But when I'm writing, I write for both, right? It can be done both ways.
And if there was a way that I could love you more, Elisa, dropping Ronald Knox's name is certainly the way to make that happen. Crystal, if you want to drop a signal figure from the golden age of detection, this would be your cue.
That is not going to happen at 9 a.m. But one of the things that I enjoy doing is throwing in things that are part of the mystery but could be misinterpreted and only puzzled out later. So it could be like an item that they find where they're like, oh, I know what this is. And it turns out later on they discover that that's not exactly what it was used for. And because it creates both a discussion amongst the players to keep them focused on the things that are happening, but also creates a semi-discord between them where they're like, no, it could be this, no, it could be this. And so it helps to keep just like the play discussion going among the players so that they're actually focused on a thing that is still important to the plot, but they're not quite sure where. Sometimes it's a pun too. I like those too. I like throw those in.
I agree with that.
I would like to, in the spirit of Gumshoe, especially since this is being recorded to be thrown up on a delightful podcast, I would like to sort of touch on the difference between finding the clue or getting the clue and figuring out the clue. And those are two different things. In Gumshoe, you never roll to find the clue. That's, the whole point of the game is that you are investigators, therefore you can investigate, therefore you can have been assumed to have found the secret door or the footprints in the garden or the blood stain on the knife or whatever it happens to be. There is no roll to spot hidden, no perception checks in Gumshoe. The only perception check is if a monster is about to leap on you, you have to make a sense trouble for that, but that's not a clue, that's a fight scene. And fight scenes, of course, can also leave or produce clues. But once the players have got all this information, it is still incumbent on them to put it together, and that is why you should, by and large, over-engineer the solution, which is to say the solution might be very, very simple. It might be that this guy's brother killed him, and but you have to provide, or at least think about, in my understanding of it, every possible route by which players will try to get to the brother. And that should be the physical evidence. He was stabbed by a left-handed man. He was stabbed by someone who had access to the house. He was stabbed, at midnight when we know half the suspects were asleep or drunk or whatever. And this classic motive means opportunity that you use to, parse out suspects in a murder mystery. Those absolutely should be present and available for player interrogation. That also then implies that there should be interpersonal clues, not just talk to the brother and he seems shifty, but talk to the brother's girlfriend and she says, no, he was, he went to get something from the car at 11:50. I don't know what he was doing at midnight. He says he was with me the whole time, but you know what? He's a cheating dog. I'll bet he was with the maid. And then you go talk to the maid, and the maid has a different version. And interpersonal clues are another great way to provide clues that you might theoretically think, how can I get the players to know this? Well, people are little tattletales, especially in murder mysteries. And so the players are, charismatic, wonderful heroes, of course, and everyone wants to confide in them. So the notion is to sort of think of it as a rock thrown into a pond, your crime, your central mystery, whatever it is, and those ripples are going in every direction across the pond. And your job as the game designer is to think of every place those ripples might hit shore and put a clue there. And shore would be perception, not just of the player characters, but of anybody in the mystery. And it also would be changes to the physical world that could be perceived. So with any act, there's going to be immense amounts of consequence. And with an act of magical murder, as in a Cthulhu-type adventure, or an act of, summoning Migo, or whatever kind of awful thing you're doing, there should be tons of clues, lots of spoor. The universe itself rebels against this kind of behavior, and so there's lots of broken parts lying around that you can repurpose into clues, feed to the players because they're gifted investigators, and then the players can figure it out. And sometimes it's as simple as, I'll bet that barn is haunted. And sometimes it's a little more complex and human, but always, always, always be thinking what logically would have happened to the regular world in the wake of this awful thing. So if the barn is haunted, there's going to be previous ghost sightings. There's going to be a land transaction where the barn was sold at way below value or something that, and all of these, they can exist nascently in your head. They can exist in your carefully written out scenario notes. They can exist at the instant the players say, I'm going to use accounting to check the barn's legal history. And you're like, yes, you are. And immediately you have to think, haunted barn, what happens? And so, then it was the site of an inquest, and then also that was sold, and you can spin that out, especially if they're, if you can do it in the form of a Gabby NPC, they can often buy you a little time to think of what's going on. Well, the old barn, let me check that record book. And that gives you that opportunity. So think of it as a rock into a pond is, I guess, my 0th law of designing an investigative scenario. And so now I sort of want to go specific questions. Crystal, you were talking about designing for kids. Do you do mysteries for kids as well? And do kids have the patience for mysteries?
It depends on what your thing that they're looking for is. Mm-hmm. It has to be interesting to the kid in order for them to fully buy into it. It could be something like some sort of just an animal that they're looking for. You could be looking for a cat. Kids love pets. Mm-hmm. And so the cat has gone missing, and now you have different things that you have to find where you're trying to chase the cat, or they're trying to find a lost toy, mm-hmm. or they're trying to find a toy that they really, really want, but they're not sure what it is. It could be any number of things, but you have to kind of play to the age group. When I write younger, and then you can scale it up easier. Whereas if you write for older kids, it's harder to scale that back, because the younger kids have a tougher time grasping some things. Now, you might have some very bright kids that might be able to figure it out real quick because they can see patterns like none other. But I generally tend to write a little younger and then add stuff in that are a little bit extra or bonus for like older kids.
I mean, I play with a table full of people with degrees from the University of Chicago, and they have problems figuring stuff out. So.
Yeah, but kids are different. Kids have like
Kids
a
are
very
a
different
whole other ball game.
And also, like, I remember I'm dating myself right now, but like, my dad used to buy me those books where when we were on car rides and things like that, you had the pen that revealed the answers,
right.
and I had a series of like mystery books that you had to figure out. If you highlighted the wrong answer, then you were outed. You can't highlight two things on the same page, or else you're cheating or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being so into all of that, like solving those mysteries.
Yep.
They should make those again.
Yeah. I want to ask about puzzles specifically because I've done this panel a million times. Well, not a million, but a lot of times.
Never invited me.
And I'm never in charge. I just suggest a panel and then I'm put on it. But puzzles are an aspect that I haven't really seen or dealt with in this. And since you are the expert, what makes a good puzzle at the table as opposed to a good puzzle to, like a crossword puzzle where you can sit and screw around with it for 9 hours?
Yeah, well, first of all, please never give anybody a crossword puzzle at the table. So for puzzles, in game, people either really love them because they're puzzle people, or they really hate them because they've been giving awful puzzles in game.
Right.
Really, the puzzles that you want to see, I see a very big difference between puzzles and traps. We're going to take traps out of this equation.
Right.
These are actual puzzles. So, is anybody playing in any of my games in the next 2 days? Great. I'm going to give an example of a puzzle that I'm running in game right now. This is spoiler, everybody listening to the podcast. So I like to build the puzzles into the environment. I do, when I'm running my own games, I do put the puzzles into the terrain that people have to actually find and figure out. When I'm writing, I describe these things so that they can be done theater of the mind, or people can, engineer their own versions of those props. So in this case, the party, by the end of this, they're looking for somebody. They're going down into this buried under the sands tomb-like place, and they come across 4 statues. I love using statues. I know everybody says that it's like a trope, but it works because it's so easy for people to have a personal connection with because they've done something with statues before. And they know that when you see statues, especially ones that are similar, but there are small differences, that it's probably a puzzle. And so all my statues are Jinn, right? And their bases are representing the elements earth, air, fire, and water, and they each are holding up a number of fingers in their hand. And I actually have the big 3D printed minis that I printed to do this, right? And so using the clue that they find in the Lich's book journal that they're trying to figure out, they don't know that there's a Lich yet, but they found this book. There's this phrase that's eloquently said, and I don't remember it by heart right now, but it's basically earth, air, fire, water, and then it gives the clue of count in to find the biggest source of power, right? And so they go to fire, and they're like, oh, that guy's holding one finger up, and if they figure it out, they count into F, and they say they get F, and then it eventually spells fear, right? And when they speak that word aloud, they open it up. And it is not, and it should take about 10 minutes for them to figure out, and if they're having trouble, this is what you need to do, right? First of all, you can always you should always have people be able to get out of a puzzle a different way. If they are completely stuck, do not make your players sit there for more than 10, 15, if they're really good puzzle people, they love puzzles, minutes. Otherwise, insert a combat. All of a sudden, the statues turn into actual Jinn, and now they have to fight it out. Or they can somehow maneuver the door and get it open another way. They can use spells, anything like that. And then, much like what you said earlier, Ken, you don't want to put clues behind rolls. But when you were saying, I'm going to use accounting to figure this out, maybe the players are not puzzle people. Maybe the players can't figure it out, but their characters should always be able to figure it out, right? So especially if you're running a one-shot, you want to make sure to give those characters abilities that they can then roll and figure something out. I mentioned this in the chapter that I wrote in Tasha's. If you are down in, if the puzzle's located in, a stone-worked like dungeon, and you have a dwarf, like maybe they would know more, right? You can always have them make history checks, and that way you can leak clues based on what they would have remembered. Like, oh, suddenly you remember a story about Jin and what, that their source of power is their intimidation and the fear that they bring to people. And, there are ways to insert it so that the players don't get stuck, but the characters can figure it out. And then they feel like they are actually contributing.
Right. Robin likes to call that the as seasoned investigators,
Right.
Yes. Which is what you can drop when they're running around chasing their tails.
Yeah, the worst thing to do, though, is like if they start checking out and they get frustrated, they completely get removed from the game. You don't want that to happen.
Rick, as a guy who has seen more than his share of bad Cthulhu investigative adventures, I'm sure, what are the big pitfalls, the sort of the, things that make you send it back and say, do it again, start over? What are the errors that people commit that you would like to warn our beloved audience away from?
The number one thing, I don't know if this is dead. I think my microphone has died. Anyway, I'm happy to speak loudly. The number one thing at Chaosium that we often have is that we will ask for 100,000 words, because that could be like a 128-page book when you add in the art and all that.
Right.
And they submit 350,000 words. And it's very hard to then, even though we try to work with them along the way, show us a rough draft when you're halfway there, a quarter way there, and because once they get it that big, most people do not want to cut 2/3 of their work. And so that's why it's better to develop things and share it, have people give you feedback, and not just write this huge thing and then that's when you share it with the world.
Right.
That's the number one thing.
Right. But in terms of specific structure of the scenario, is there a flaw or an error that you see people make, especially maybe first-time designers?
Well, fortunately, I work with Mike Mason and Paul Fricker and
Yeah,
Lynn
right.
Hardy,
Mhm.
and we have them take care of usually
Right.
first. I don't usually see things up front. I
Right.
usually see things when they get to a certain draft stage,
Mhm.
especially before it's going to go into layout. That's why it's that big.
Mhm.
We have problems with it. Usually that it has too many directions versus just a few simple places it can go.
Right.
And while I like sandboxes and having choices, sometimes it's just too many.
Mhm.
And so a lot of GMs are going to possibly struggle with running it, and that can be a real problem, where if they don't have a sense of where the thing is supposed to go. And so that's probably the first thing that leaps to mind.
Your problem is Robin's problem with my adventures, in fact.
I'm not naming names.
Right. Robin likes the maze of clues where you're led through sort of branching paths, find this, don't find this. I like the ocean of clues where something bad is happening in post-war Vienna, go look. and Robin says, look where? I said, in a bar, of course, what's wrong with you? And with that, I think, does anyone have any other pithy thoughts that they need to make sure get on the public record before we go to questions?
At 9:30 in the morning?
Well, at any time, but 9:30 is when we happen to be, yeah. Okay, looks like it's questioning time. Who has a question? In the back there, yes.
So it's not trying to run investigations. I often find the difficulty, I know the answers,
Right.
and it seems really obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes pretty quickly obvious that the players, of course, don't have that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a litmus test for your own work? Something that you look at and say, you know what, you're falling prey, likely you're falling prey to, you know the answers, so it seems obvious.
Right.
Play
There's some way
testing.
of catching yourself.
So the question is, since Crystal's recording, we want to repeat the question, make sure that
Yep.
it gets picked up. The question is, when you're running a mystery, you know the answer. The players run into a wall that you did not even know was there because you think it's so obvious. What is the litmus test that you apply to make sure that that doesn't happen? And Elisa, you were saying play testing.
Yeah, I said play testing. One thing that I know people don't do, and you're all at fault, and so are we, but also
None of us will vote soon.
play testing. You like run it by somebody, and even better, people you don't know. And if you're doing puzzles, especially people that love puzzles and people that hate puzzles. But playtesting your adventures is always really important, especially before actual publishing. I use conventions a lot, especially post-pandemic, because I used to have game nights all the time, weekly, where I would play test material. But now I use conventions really to play test stuff. And so people who play my games sometimes are playing an adventure for the first, second, third time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where I can see if I would want to publish something like that or not. But it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't playtest, which you should run through it in your head from the perspective of an imaginary player. And,
Hold on, here.
what would I do? Or if you have a game group that you're writing it for, what would Zach do? What would Steve do? And you should know how they think, and you should be able to sort of predict where they're going to spin their wheels. And maybe sometimes you plan that because you're a monster, but sometimes it's helpful to think, oh, right, if Dolly is not there that day, no one is going to get this, and we have to add more clues. And that, by the way, is sort of the generic and usual response is, if the players are going to miss things, add more things for them to not miss. And again, this is where NPCs are crazy helpful, because they can say anything or do anything. And worst case scenario, the bad guy is worried that the heroes are too close to them, so he sends someone to try and beat them up or rub them out, and that provides more clues because they can shake that guy down and say, "Who hired you?" And he says, "It was the brother, he hired me."
NPCs are great for that.
Right.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry? All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on, real quick.
Right,
I'm going to add
yeah.
on really quickly to that, and that is this: when you write a scenario or buy a scenario or anything like that, it is a framework. That is not a die hard. You have to follow it to the T. And so, if something is not working for your group, or when you're writing something is just not working in playtesting, or someone adjust it on the fly. Learn how to do improv GMing. There is a lot of awesome YouTube videos out there, a lot of people that you can follow. Watch actual plays and stuff like that for improv GMing. And if you're in the middle of a game, do it on the fly. If you're trying to write it out understanding that people are going to change it, and you have to be okay with that too.
I just remembered, if you don't mind, I wanted to add one thing. The caveat of what I'm saying about playtesting is if you're writing for publishing, right? If you're just planning a game for your normal game group that's, coming up this Saturday or whatever, you're probably not going to have the opportunity to playtest. They are your playtest group, they're your group. And then what Crystal was saying is perfectly on track. But if you're doing publishing, and the other reason why playtesting is important is every single group, and anybody who's run the same adventure twice, or even just twice, or more, every single group is going to handle an adventure differently. They're going to come at it in a different way. They're going to think of creative things like the accounting thing that you would never have thought of. And so when you're playtesting those things, you can then take notes of what everyone does, and then edit your adventure to include things like how to handle those things. And it's just going to make it, like if you do it in GM tips in a sidebar or something like, or even just straight in the adventure itself, it's going to make then anybody who picks up the adventure GM know how to do it, right? Like you were saying. So it's really important. Like it will give anybody that buys your adventure a guideline of how to run it.
Well, I know with Ken's example of the haunted barn, the first thing that popped into my mind is, what if they burn it down right away?
Right. Well, that's a whole different question. then the thing under the barn floorboards gets out. Yeah.
So this may be a really good segue off of that. I kind of have a two-part question. I'm curious, we were just talking about mysteries where there's a pre-written answer or solution. What do you folks make of systems like Brindlewood Bay, where there is no pre-written solution and you're kind of creating it on the fly? And how do you think those two approaches may be able to kind of interact with each other or borrow from each other?
The question is about the Brindlewood Bay style fully improvised mystery where there's no pre-written solution or pre-imagined solution. And what does that say to more traditional mystery games, and do they interplay productively? Does anyone have Brindlewood Bay or improv mystery thoughts? Elisa, of course.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize the whole conversation. For Brindlewood Bay, first of all, it's an awesome format and such a good game. But in my mind, I put that into the storytelling, role-playing game sort of RPG more than like strict like mechanics, right? And so it's encouraging everybody to be part of building that mystery, and then that's why you get an improvised answer. And for things like a mystery where you're leading to a person or leading to a place, I think that works really well because it doesn't matter. You never want to use that approach when they actually have to like solve a thing in order to like open a door or get out of a room or whatever it is, because I have found that players get intensely frustrated when they think an answer is absolutely correct and it's not the right answer. My advice in all those occasions is if it is an answer that could be, that absolutely makes sense, just let them have the entrance to the door. And I'll give it a quick anecdote. I was on a stream where a DM gave us a puzzle, and it was an anagram, which I hate. Don't do anagrams. Unless it's very specifically meant for that. The answer was, oh my God, the answer was entrance. And I said, I can't remember right now, it's too early in the morning. But basically, I said another anagram that basically would allow us to enter. It was something can enter. Sorry. So I'm looking at it, I'm writing all the letters down in like random places on a paper because that's how I visualize. And like, oh, can enter. And he started laughing. He's like, nope, I can't believe I'm duping the puzzle designer. Like, can enter, like that should let me. And it was entrance, and I just wasn't seeing it. It was like 1 a.m. And so, but I say, if somebody comes up with something like that and it makes sense, don't let them sit there frustrated forever. Let them just enter, right? But for Brindlewood Bay, you're never leading to like a specific thing like that, and that's why it works, right?
Well, I mean, if they're having fun doing it, why would you want to stop them from doing it? And then, move them in a different direction when they're having so much fun with that. I mean, I like one-shots because there's so much improv that you can have in them. So if they're going in a certain direction, if I was running it, I wouldn't want to stop them.
Well, that's why Brindlewood Bay is so fun in that way, because you can lead to an eventual answer together.
I think too, one of the things that as a GM you have to learn how to do is read your players. So, for instance, like with Brindlewood Bay, that there is no answer to it. You guys are basically creating it throughout the story play and everything like that, and you guys are following your own interests. With anything else, with like an answer to the end, as long as you get to that end, you follow your players' interests. And if they're getting stuck and getting frustrated, they're no longer interested or buying into whatever you're running, and you have to pivot, or you have to get them back on track.
The sort of the problem with pre-figured out mysteries is that players can get stalled or stuck or sidetracked, and the game then does not progress. The problem with improv mysteries is that the explanation often makes no damn sense. And so if the game is the sort of game that privileges a sort of, what I want to say, intellectual engagement with the property, like Call of Cthulhu, like Trail of Cthulhu, then, or a thriller game where the right answer is then going to feed into the rest of the scenario, or the rest of the campaign, then it's harder to Brindlewood your way out of it. And so that sort of improv is superb for one-shots, especially for one-shots where everyone is friends and has been drinking and will never revisit it. It's harder to put into an ongoing campaign or an ongoing story. That said, the great writer and game designer S. John Ross did a play example for me way back in the Star Trek days, where he says, so the Klingons have got their hidden base on Lyris 6. You've put mysterious transmissions from Lyris 6. You've got cargo ships disappearing off Lyris 6. The Klingons on the space station have been captured with shirts saying, we work at the Klingon secret base on Lyris 6, and all we got is this terrible t-shirt. And the players examine all of this evidence and they say, right, off to Altair 9. And your job as the GM is to say, how did you see through the Klingons' brilliant deception and move the Klingon base to
That was a
Altair 9
trap.
and have the fight there, which is the point of the scenario. So I guess even in a pre-written scenario, think, can you change the answer such that the rest of the campaign will still make sense? If you're still fighting Klingons, it kind of doesn't matter where they are. If you're still fighting Migo, it doesn't matter if they went to, the haunted barn or the haunted hill. It's all good.
Yeah, that's just like the move the tavern to the other city. They take
Right.
the wrong fork.
The Schrodinger's
yeah,
beggar.
yeah, exactly. But the one thing that you don't want to do when you're improvising like that is you don't want the answer to seem so arbitrary that I hate it when people say, I hate puzzles because you have to read the GM's mind, right? And that's what they think puzzles are, that if they're impossible to solve unless you know exactly what the GM is thinking, you'll never get it. And so if you're improvising specific answers, not Brindlewood style, then you're going to just replant those thoughts into people's heads that oh, you're just making it up as you're going along. I'll never be able to figure out a puzzle.
Right. Yeah, you've had your hand up for the whole question, so sure.
Kind of springboarding exactly off of that, but in the reverse of, oh, you're going this way. Oh, well, yes, they've gone in a completely different direction. What if they get it too early, whether it's a shot in the dark or they're just brilliant?
Combat.
Riding that line between pivoting or just
Right.
giving it to them without either feeling cheap, because you're either stealing it from them or...
What if they get it too early is the question.
Yeah.
And Elisa, as is her wont, has given the correct answer. So expand on that correct answer, Elisa.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always try to have some sort of combat in my back pocket just in case. If you're running something in, obviously this is not for, publication reasons, but if you're running something live and you have to adjust for time, everybody knows the tricks of upping the number of monsters if the fight's going way too well in the player's, time and you need to fill out some time, or lowering the hit points on things if they're taking a really long time getting through something. So yeah, for me, if people get things right away, I will either throw in some really good role play where they can maybe get some clues for later, or some other information, or combat, because it's easy to fill that way.
Yeah, my universal response is honor the players. Even if they got lucky, that should still feel right. Because the thing that is fatal to a pre-established mystery is the sense that the GM is being arbitrary and just making stuff up. The reason you play in a mystery game, unless it's explicitly Brindlewood style, is you're trying to solve the mystery. And you feel cheated if the GM just could have made it any one of 9 people and you don't care. That feels a little cheaty and soft. And worse yet, you solve the mystery, the GM lies and says you didn't solve the mystery just because the GM is caught flat-footed. Don't do that. Honor those players' genius deduction, and then when they confront the guy, he was a vampire the whole time and he attacks them or whatever, right? And that rewards them. They get a cool combat and a fun thing. His plan is thrown off. It's maybe breaks open stuff for later in the campaign. You get the rewards of everyone in the village or the mansion or whatever thinking you're amazing, and that can maybe pay character rewards going down the road. But yeah, always honor the players. Never improv to make their experience worse, I guess would be my zero.
It's one of the
rule
10 commandments,
right, yeah,
by the way. It's
yeah.
you never lie, and you never cheat, and you always have the information open, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it really good.
Let's go to you and then.
So I just started playing more mystery, or running mystery games, so I apologize if this is a little rudimentary. But
Rudimentary is cool.
okay, cool. How do you approach the situation of a game master or referee policing which character can solve a clue based on the characteristics or intelligence level of that player's character? So especially when it's at odds with the player and the character. So it's well, the barbarian keeps coming up with all the solutions for this one puzzle, or
right.
the detective doesn't know anything. They're not using the obvious.
Right, yeah. The question is, how do you handle a mismatch between character and player, and how do you, if you're a GM, how do you resist the temptation to police who can do what? In an ideal world, I would say, you already have some niche protection built into your game. So in Gumshoe, some characters are good at accounting, some characters are good at, face-to-face, some characters are good at beating answers out of people, whatever it happens to be. And you sort of play to those strengths as you investigate. In a sort of a straightforward, how come the barbarian is always solving the puzzles? Well, he's used to catching weasels with his bare hands. He's tricksy and cunning. That's how he does it. Come up with an excuse to make the player validated. I mean, again, this is maybe a weakness of mine, but if a player is doing something cool, never punish them. And if the character who's playing the detective is complaining that they're not getting the puzzles, then that's a time where you go out of character to that guy after the game and you say, yeah, I understand that you're not getting the puzzles and it feels like we're nerfing your detective. Is there a sort of puzzle that you, Steve, because it's always Steve, that you, Steve, are good at, then maybe we can, we can start feeding stuff a little more towards your character so you can be playing the character that you rolled up. Without saying, well, do the damn reading, Steve. Nikki the Barbarian's amazing. That is basically my way is to sort of try and, if the detective is complaining, talk to them out of game about it. But if you, the GM, are just like, it doesn't comport with my sense of reality that the barbarian is smart, well, reread Conan, you loser.
I find similar to that is when you have some extroverts who want to talk a hell of a lot, and then you have some introverts that aren't big talkers and is trying to get them engaged and try to keep it balanced. You're not like with a stopwatch timing everybody, you've got 5 minutes to talk and you got 5 minutes to talk. But it's balancing that out. That's always the thing that I struggle with.
The other thing too is that you can also think a little bit more outside the box as to what a barbarian does, which is fight. Fighting is oftentimes pattern recognition. So barbarian is going to pick up on patterns. And if that's a part of the mystery is that there's a pattern going on, they're going to pick up on that before anyone else might.
Or pick up on threats.
They're going to pick up on other things where now they're putting the 2 and 2 together in their head and they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Blurt it out because, that's a very barbarian thing to do. And hey, look, that is exactly what's happening. The other players didn't see it because they don't have that type of pattern recognition.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, if the character with the high int isn't getting it because the player isn't getting it, you can also make the helpful suggestion of, it's just like telling somebody like make a perception check and make an int roll or whatever it is in your game. And when they do, say you noticed this thing that you hadn't noticed before, right? And speak into their backstory or something they did earlier in the game. Because of what you remember that happened a couple weeks ago, you see that this is really similar in this way, right? And give them the hint so that they can use their higher intelligence as a character in order to solve it. And if they're still not getting it and the barbarian gets it first, I revert to Ken's Conan comment.
Okay, you in the back.
So in like a realistic world, right, there are rules of physics and stuff help with the following the laws of mysteries, right? How does that change, if at all, when you have a world with magic or other supernatural elements that can explicitly break the expectations of the characters, and so they may not be familiar with the actual thing that happened in behind the mystery, right? It was an elder being that broke the laws of physics, right? How does that change the mystery pattern, if at all?
Okay, the question is, in regular mysteries, you're assumed to be following the laws of physics. In supernatural mysteries or magical mysteries, maybe you're not, and how does that affect play? Well, in a Cthulhu-y style investigation, the reason your characters are so good at solving mysteries is they're the ones who believe in elder things that break the laws of physics. So they're aware of what kind of spoor you're talking about. So they walk in and everything's magnetized to the ceiling. They're saying, aha, it's our old enemy Yog-Sothoth, and he's at it again. Or whatever. That's not a spoiler. And so, in a magical universe, a fantasy universe, if there's some sort of, someone summoned an imp to murder a guy, one of your characters is a sorcerer or a wizard or whatever, he's like, I sense the presence of an imp has done this. Someone has summoned an imp. We don't know who, but we know it was impy. And then that, the characters live in a world or in a Cthulhu universe, they only live in a world, and the rest of the world doesn't yet, of supernatural messed up stuff, and that's why they are suited to do this investigation. You're not playing Lieutenant Columbo versus the Mythos. You're playing, a hobo and a dilettante and a weird professor versus the Mythos.
And you can still hint that too. It doesn't have to be like the player of the character that realizes, oh, there's been a summoning here. Of course, like otherwise nothing else makes sense. You can like say you can engage all of the players by saying, oh, there's circular char marks on the ground or something like that makes them feel like, oh, something was like pulled from another place to here, and then that gives everybody the chance to kind of say, oh, maybe there was a summoning or some sort of spell that was done there, and they can you can drip drop that into figuring it out.
Well, in Call of Cthulhu in particular, there are all kinds of secrets people were not meant to know, and mind-bending things that drive you crazy and all that, and it's not supposed to make sense. And so if someone is getting all, oh, well, physics dictates this, and Cthulhu can't have that kind of mass without causing this, it's like, well, that's exactly why it's so frustrating. It's supposed to not make any sense, and that's part of the fun. Now, if you got an argumentative person, I don't have 100 tips on how to fix them, but sometimes it's like, it's driving you crazy, isn't it?
One of the things about kind of diffusing those situations is going to reflect back to consent and safety rules, session zeros, where you set expectations with your players. And then that way, if somebody's arguing with the table, you can be like, look, we talked about this at session 0, where if you're having an issue, we can talk after game, but roll with it right now, and we can always adjust things or edit the story later to fit in with what we decide as a group. And so kind of navigating those things and expectations before you even start is going to help kind of curb some of those. Not every player, mind you, is going to buy into that. But that is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I may be wrong, but I don't know if that was like the intent of the question. I was seeing as like how do you creatively write for physics breaking things, right?
Yeah.
More than people arguing like, oh, that couldn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting challenge for sure.
And then, but that is part of the unique fun of writing Cthulhu adventures, is because you do want to break the laws of physics or the laws of what's naturally understood, and the way in which it breaks is itself a clue, and that is every time this happens, you get a blast of blue Cherenkov radiation because it violates space-time. And it's like, that's great. Now I can just put a mysterious blue blast everywhere I want to mess the players up. That's amazing. I love this stuff.
I was trying to answer this question, but you mentioned puzzles, and it's more 5e centric. So for me, I guess kind of my white whale to a certain degree are like combat encounters with puzzle elements taking place in the middle of it where the players can brute force it, but if they can figure out the puzzle, they can maybe weasel their way out of it in a very creative way. The problem with that is that they have one chance to do it. It's not like a video game where they can kind of do over and try different things. So how, if that's possible as your experience as a puzzle designer for 5e, how would you do that, even for like system agnostic stuff?
So the question is, especially within a 5e context, how do you combine combat and puzzle such that if worst, you can keep doing the combat and it'll be great, but you could also solve the combat with a clever puzzle, and the trouble being you have to do it only one time instead of being able to iterate it.
Yeah, these are my favorite kinds of puzzles to insert into games because it engages everybody at the table, right? You've got your smashy people smashing, you've got your investigatory people investigating, and you can even incorporate your rogue if with either like thieves' tools to have to like do something in the puzzle or work on the door or whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's always a door. Doors are the biggest challenge in all of the 5e.
But get the door open.
But I actually really like engaging it, and the way that I solve it is it's both. You kill all the monsters, and then one of them has the key to the door on them when you search the body or something like that, or the magic thing or whatever it is, or you solve the puzzle. the door opens, and then you decide, are you going to make a run for it, or are you going to continue to kill or send the rogue ahead to do whatever it is in the next room and come back? But what it does is it keeps everybody occupied, and especially if the players themselves are disengaging from puzzle, they have something to do. And so it really like meets all of everybody's talents all in one go. But make it both. Don't make it either or.
Do you have like verbiage or like signals that you use to like make it seem? Because I feel like sometimes if a player wants to do like I can do an investigative thing to help solve the puzzle in combat, or I can do combat. How do you signal that it's worthwhile to do the investigative thing rather than just throwing it?
The question is there a code phrase or a way to present as a GM the possibility of the puzzle short-circuiting or solving the combat?
People always engage with a countdown timer of some sort, flashing lights. The room is filling with water. You're about to drown. Like anything that presents anything that presents a danger to them that diverts their attention back to the puzzle is always good, right? I don't know. Everybody else has some ideas there.
I'm just imagining that the guys who built your Jinn statues also put like a robot to fight if you're bored with the puzzle.
One of the things that I like to do is absolutely have like some sort of stressor, like what Elisa said. I also do in combat. I'll throw a Jenga tower onto the table, and they take a turn. They take a piece from the Jenga. It's not really puzzle solving itself. That is more like a stressor thing. But you can do things then like adjust combat rules. So they can take a combat action, but then their movement instead is used for investigating something. Or so adjusting slightly the beats within a fight to kind of encourage them to do some investigating.
Yeah, if you haven't played Dread, the Jenga Tower thing is it's amazing for creating tension.
Yep.
I'm terrible at it, but
one thing that I've done both in Cthulhu and in Supers games is you have a fight in the laboratory wherever the bad guy's laboratory is. So he's a mad scientist, he's a mutant super, whatever he is. He's got a laboratory. And ordinarily, this monster or sorcerer can wipe the floor with the party, but at some point in the fight, you knock over a shelf of chemicals on him, and he goes, ah! And it's like, oh, something in this room can kill this guy. And now you can solve that intellectually. You can brute force it by just, everyone grab 10 beakers and throw them.
And a fire's going to get started.
Right, exactly. A fire's going to get started. But the fire does get started, and now it's like, well, how long do we continue this fight? We could burn to death, but also we can finally kill this guy. And that sort of, the way you signal that there's something to solve is literally you signal that there's something to solve. And if they don't pick up on it, you say to the equivalent of the barbarian, the murderiest of the murder hobos, you say, if it bleeds, you can kill it. And then they're like, oh, all right. And now you have their intellect can be engaged at the same time that they're doing the fighting. And it works really well in Supers because that kind of puzzle solving is inherent to the genre. And it also can work really well in Mythos adventuring because the notion of the unstoppable monster with one silver bullet weakness is also very, very standard in horror. And I think often players are expecting it, which is sad because then they go up against a Shoggoth and it has no weaknesses. Sorry. Yeah.
To piggyback off that, instead of from a GM standpoint, from a publishing standpoint, right, from a writing standpoint, if on that spectrum of combat to puzzle you're writing, where do you tend to defer are you focusing on the puzzle elements or the combat element with those puzzle aspects?
That might have been picked up by the recorder, but I'm really fast. When you're writing for publication a adventure or a scene with both combat and puzzles, which do you emphasize in the write-up and which do you defer to, I guess, by instinct or by tendency? And again, I'm going to look at Lisa.
I feel like I'm talking the most. I do both. It's just like I have, you walk into a town and then in the adventure description you list all of the locations with all of the information. I do it the same way. It's like combat however it's formatted, whichever system you're using. But I'll have the combat and the description and the way to win, right? And puzzle and description and the way to win. And I present both to the GM that is reading it so that they know how to solve both depending on what the players are going to do. I do really like to take advantage of sidebars with advice when I'm writing these types of things, because it helps people that have never run scenarios like that before. And so I highly recommend doing that, because it passes the knowledge along of how to do it, right? But I never leave it up to the GM to decide what's going to happen. It's literally present both to your players, right?
Okay.
I agree with that.
We are practically out of time, so I'm going to let everyone plug a way to find them on the socials, since this is going up onto the universe.
Yep.
And otherwise, plug something that they want plugged at this last little bit. So, Rick, how do people find you, or do they? Do you withdraw into the woods of Michigan only to be summoned in your hour of greatest need?
I'm on Facebook more than anywhere else.
Okay.
Because I'm over 50.
All right.
But my email is rick@chaosium.com. I'm always happy to answer emails as much as I can. Chaosium.com, I have a blog, but that's more about nostalgia and collecting stuff. But no, that's it.
Okay.
You can find me on all the old things at Geeky Pinup, which is terrible, but it is what it is. And all the new things at Elisa Teague, because I finally got smart. And right now I am working at Infinite Stories, and it's a brand new GM toolkit where I'm hoping to then upload a bunch of my examples of puzzles. But it's also an artisan marketplace where you and your writing or art or music or whatever can be put up for other GMs to use. And it's a great way for you to test out your own things that you're doing. And you can go to infinitestories.com right now and join the pre-launch. We're going to be launching in about a month and a half or so. I'm not making any promises, but software. But we're in pre-launch where we're giving away content every single day, and you can see how it works, and it's super cool. And so that's my plug.
I'm Crystal Mazur. You can find me on almost every social media platform under Body and Soul 152 or the Geeky Panda. You can. The recording for this will be up on Darker Days Radio. I am a co-host for that. You can also find a whole bunch of stuff that I've worked on, both at the IGDN booth that's here, but also Wedding Games and Storyteller Forge. And then I'm also floating around here. You guys can stop and talk to me. I love talking to people and nerding out. So
It's easy to find me in the Chaosium booth.
And I'm Kenneth Hite. I have a podcast, drops every week with my beloved Canadian life partner, Robin Laws, called Ken and Robin Talk About Stuff, available wherever you find your fine podcasts. I'm Kenneth Hite on the various socials, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, even Instagram if you just want to see pictures of my cat and what I had to drink a couple of weeks ago. So with that, thank you all for coming out at 9 in the damn morning. You're heroes.
Thank you for moderating, Kevin.
Yes, thank you.
thank you.